7 senators in 21 minutes. That's all right. Questions?
I got two, one on policy and then one sort of about the meeting this week. On policy, what exactly do you want on asylum and parole? And then on the meeting, what did you say to General Brown? Did you ask about where he was born? And tell us the background why you did that and if you felt that was appropriate.
Yeah, I asked him, when's the last time you've been to the border? And he said, I was born in Texas. I didn't think that was a good response. You know, I like General Brown. You know, he's a great guy. I've got nothing against General Brown. I was frustrated because nobody up there knew anything about the border. So when I say, when's the last time you went to the border, you tell me you're born in Texas, that's not answering my question. So I like General Brown. He's a great guy. But they didn't have one person there to talk about the border. Everything was about Ukraine. Everybody behind me will vote to aid Ukraine if we can get the border right.
And then asylum and parole, what would you like?
Number one, start with things that we know work. If you're past the credible fear standard, your hearing is on average, what, 3 or 4 years? 4. Stay outside the United States. Once you let people loose into the country, it gets back all over the world. Once you get to America, you never leave. The first thing you need to do to stop the flow or slow it down is make sure that people waiting for the asylum hearing are not released into the country, because that incentivizes people to come, because once they get released, the belief is you're never going to go back. Stop paroling people en masse. 240,000 people were given blanket parole under a statute that requires an individual analysis based on substantial benefit to the country or undue, unusual humanitarian need. Quit abusing the law. He could do both of those things without one bill being passed, has been said. He's chosen to let people loose in the country. He's chosen to abuse the parole law, and his choice has led to a broken border with elevated terrorist threats. Joe Biden has been asleep at the wheel when it comes to the border. You need to wake up, Mr. President, before we get hit.
Senator Murphy was asked downstairs if he thought the record 12,000 encounters at the border on Tuesday was a problem, and whether he shares your desire to lower the number of encounters. He says what the problem is that there aren't enough resources to process those encounters. So
well, these negotiations should end. Because he doesn't understand. It's hard to fix a problem if you don't understand what it's all about. If you think 12,000 people are coming here because we're under-resourced, that's insane. They're coming here because they believe once they get here, they never leave. Under Biden, once you show up at the border, you're going to stay here forever. Catch and release is why they're coming, Chris. It's not about resources. The policy choices of allowing everybody to apply for asylum to stay in the country to wait for a hearing 4 years from now has led to a surge at the border. Parole is being abused. It is about policy choices, not about resources.
Well, and to be fair, the President's supplemental request was
The
President's supplemental request was funding to address the symptoms. The symptoms are a New York mayor saying it's out of control. Chicago saying they have too many people sleeping in tents in cold conditions. He was there to actually request money to address the symptom. We're here to fix the problem.
And just to follow up, is DACA amnesty in exchange for policy?
Nothing to incentivize more illegal immigrants. I can't think of a worse idea than to give people legal status. Right now, legalizing people incentivize more people to come. Maybe I'll be in the next wave of DACA. No legalization, secure the border to get money for Ukraine, to get money for Israel, and to help Taiwan. Secure the border before we get attacked. Secure the border before the next terrorist attack happens. The director of the FBI said since October the 7th, a rogues gallery of terrorist groups are urging their members and people who are sympathetic to their cause to attack America. What do you get? You get a safer country.
Senator, 2 questions. One, I wanted to ask you guys on the timeline. Do you think this deal is possible before the end of the year? And then secondarily, can you speak to just kind of the fundamental disagreement? It seems like obviously you guys are very much about deterrence. You want to send a different message to people that they shouldn't come here, that you're not welcome to be released in this country. But Democrats fundamentally don't want to send that message. They don't want to tell migrants they're not welcome here. They don't want to say you have to stay in these home countries and wait years.
I agree with you.
So how do you get past that fundamental ideology?
They got to change their messaging or we're not going to survive as a nation. Here's what I tell my Democratic colleagues. You want to please people that literally want the border to stay open in an unlimited fashion. 76% of Americans would like to see the border secured. It's like pulling teeth talking to these guys. What do I get? How can I sell this to my caucus? Here's what you need to sell to your caucus. On your watch, on the Biden administration's watch, the largest amount of legal crossing is occurring daily. We're on track to 10 million legal immigrants in 4 years of the Biden administration. The threats to the country at an all-time high. What do you get? You get a secure nation if you work with us.
On the timeline, can you talk about, I mean, if you think that these
Why don't
talks are
you
failing,
talk about the timeline?
if you think the talks are failing, is there any practical ability for you to pass something by the end of the year?
I don't think the talks are failing. There are conversations going on right now, and I'm hopeful they're going to produce a result. But that happens only if the Democrats get serious. And as has been pointed out, I mean, the Democrat mayor of New York, Eric Adams, is in town today, meeting with Chuck Schumer, and talking about what I'm sure he's been sharing publicly, and that is that this crisis is creating huge problems for him in New York, having to cut education funding, having to close libraries, having to freeze hiring police force. I mean, this has real consequences, not just for border communities, but for communities all across this country. So it's got to be dealt with, it's got to be fixed, and I think the vote yesterday, if nothing else, sent a loud, clear message to the Democrats that that's the case. Now, the White House is going to have to engage, particularly if Senate Democrats are unwilling to do what we're suggesting be done. But this isn't a money issue. You can't throw money at it. This requires changes in policy that change the signals that we're sending to people who are coming across the border illegally, and the magnets that are out there that keep pulling them. And that's what Senator Langford and others are trying to accomplish.
One last question.
Senator, you mentioned that you wanted the president to get involved.
Yes.
Would you consider policy changes through executive action instead of the legislative changes?
Well, number one, that's a really good question. Mr. President, you may not know it, but you could actually fix this without any of us doing anything. You could go back to the policy of making people wait outside the country for their hearing, which is 4 years away. And here's what I know works. You're not going to pay $10,000 or $50,000 to get to the United States to remain in Mexico for 4 or 5 years. That's why people stopped. So parole. Tell your Secretary of Homeland Security stop paroling people on a mass basis. If you did those two things, it would go down dramatically. Now, about policy fixes. We need statutory changes to make it permanent. The President of the United States has all the power he needs to dramatically reduce the flow. To make it lasting beyond his administration, we need a statute. And here's what he needs to understand. If you don't use your executive tools or work with us for a statutory solution, none of us who are supportive of Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan can vote on a supplemental, because you're making us pick countries abroad over our own homeland security. And I'll end where I started. I've never been more worried about a terrorist attack on our nation than I am right now. It's just not me saying it. It's all the people in the intelligence community. Mr. President, you are the commander-in-chief. You have a house, a plane, and a bunch of people working for you. You're in charge of the intelligence community. You're in charge of our nation's national defense. Mr. President, your own people are telling you America's exposed. And I feel like I'm in an episode of 24. The clock is ticking. Can we get there in time? People tell me they're probably already here. You're probably right, some. But after October the 7th, the number of people who want to punish us for helping Israel is through the roof. Every day that Israel has to fight for its survival and we have a broken border is a dangerous day for America. Thank you.